Hello, everyone. Thank you all so much for being here. I'm so excited to introduce our speaker. Ms. Tessa Johnson joined Des Moines University in 2019 as an admissions assistant and has served as a recruitment and admissions specialist for the past 3 years. She earned her bachelor's degree from the University of Minnesota, Twin Cities, and now works closely with applicants to the DMU's Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine and Masters of Science in Anatomy program. Ms. Johnson is passionate about learning each student's unique story and providing guidance throughout the application process. She is dedicated to connecting prospective students with information, mentorship, and support as they pursue their pre-med or pre-health goals. Through her work, she advances Des Moines University's mission to improve lives in our global community by preparing diverse groups of highly competent and compassionate health professionals. Thank you all again for being with us today, and I will now pass it over to Ms. Johnson.
Hello? I think she froze. Oh.
Sorry about that. My Zoom crashed for a minute there, right as we were getting started. Can you hear me okay now?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Let me get my PowerPoint pulled up here. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you everyone for being here, and welcome back to anybody that attended our other DMU session with Dr. Spoctor focusing on our Master of Science in Anatomy program a couple weeks back. As mentioned, my name is Tessa. I'm a recruitment and admissions specialist at DMU. So today I'm going to focus on our Doctor of Osteopathic Medicine program. I am going to start by giving a little bit of an overview and background of the program and then dive a little bit more into the admissions process. I hope that if I talk fast enough, we'll have plenty of time for questions as well. So I'm happy to answer those at the end. A little bit of a background about DMU in general. So our school was founded in 1898. That makes us the second oldest of all of the osteopathic medical schools. So we have a really strong reputation, and we have over 125 years of really preparing students for excellence in medicine. So we have three colleges on campus that have 10 degree programs that I'll get to in just a second here. We have about 1,800 or so total enrollment. That is more than the students that will ever be on our campus because that does include like third and fourth year students in their rotation programs. We have a couple online programs, so it feels a little bit smaller when you're on campus with us. And speaking of campus, we actually just moved a few summers back to a brand new campus located in West Des Moines, Iowa. So West Des Moines is a suburb of Des Moines, the capital city. We're about 15 minutes or so from the downtown area, so still not far, but our campus is in a little bit more of a suburban spread out area, so we have a little bit more room here. And Des Moines itself is a thriving, growing, and affordable mid-sized city. So it is a really nice place to be while you are in your medical school experience. And with that new campus, of course, we got a huge upgrade to our overall facilities and especially the technology on all of our rooms across campus. So our new campus was really designed to be collaborative, flexible, and really support student well-being. So we have a lot of open study areas for group study. We have some small study rooms for individual study. We have a big cafeteria area that's a really nice kind of home base on campus where especially over like the noon to 1 hour, students will be there hanging out with each other, getting a chance to know the students in their program and in some of the other degree programs on campus as well. And it is also, as I mentioned, designed for student well-being. So we have a really beautiful wellness center on campus that has a walking track, groups, exercise rooms, all the strength and cardio equipment that you can imagine. We have students that play intramural sports there. So it is a really nice place to make sure that you are attending to your physical health, your mental health, all of that while in medical school. Okay, so I mentioned 10 different degree programs. The one that we'll focus on today is our DO program, but I did want to mention we do have several other programs. They are all graduate degrees in medicine or health science. So everybody on campus with us is going to be studying to work somewhere in medicine or healthcare. So that does lead to that really cool collaborative interprofessional environment on our campus. These last few on the list here, I will also point out that if you do enter our DO program, these are all offered as dual degree opportunities. So students do have the opportunity to complete a master's in anatomy, a master's in biomedical sciences, or a PhD in biomedical sciences, a master in public health, or a master in healthcare administration in addition to that DO program. So just something to keep in mind. I think that most of you are probably a little bit familiar with osteopathic medicine already, but I will just really briefly go through what we sort of see as how that differs from an MD program, if that's something that you're more familiar with. So DOs incorporate medical care with personal attention, active listening, and engaged service. So what we are really teaching our students is that when somebody comes into your office as a physician, you are not treating them as a headache or as back pain or as whatever their diagnosis might be. They're a whole person, and that symptom, whatever they're coming in to talk about that day, is just one aspect of who they are as a whole person. So we really train DOs to understand that all of the aspects of physical health, mental health, spiritual health, those all integrate into who that person is as a whole. So our program is going to be 4 years long. It does involve training in osteopathic manual medicine, or OMM. You might also hear it called osteopathic manipulative therapy, OMT, all referring to those same techniques. So that is one of the main things that distinguishes DO schools from MD schools, is that in the first 2 years on campus, you have OMM labs. So that means that you are having an opportunity to learn how to get comfortable feeling structures, feeling anatomy, doing hands-on musculoskeletal manipulation while you're in your first and second year. So some DOs go on to do that quite a bit in their career as they're treating patients. Some DOs, depending on what specialty they may go into, don't use that too much in their daily practice. I've heard from our students that they so really appreciate having that content because going into their rotations, like they already know how to do some of those soft skills of asking for consent before you put your hands on a patient, just being a little bit more comfortable feeling things hands-on. So that is really helpful no matter what specialty you may end up going into. And as I mentioned a little bit, so first 2 years are going to be on campus with us. And then years 3 and 4 are where students are out in hospitals and clinics doing their hands-on learning in those clinical rotation settings. So while you are on campus with us, there are, as I mentioned, several lectures and labs that you will all get to use as part of your learning experience. So the majority of content is delivered through flexible lectures. So that means that students have the opportunity for most of their coursework in the first and second year to attend lectures live in person, live on Zoom, or watch a recording back later on. So that is really helpful for students that have all kinds of different study schedules. If you're an early morning person, if you're a night owl, you do have the opportunity to tailor things a little bit and decide what works best for you. Those lectures are integrated with some case-based learning and small group work. So you do get a chance, especially as you go into the second year, to really start to apply those foundational sciences that you're learning to real patient cases and a little bit more of how does that actually look when you're working as a physician in the field. In addition to those lectures that are offered in a block schedule format, we do have several lab experiences. So as I mentioned on our new campus, one of the huge upgrades we got was we now have an entire floor of one of our buildings that is dedicated to simulated patient encounters. So those include working with mannequins, as you can see a little bit of a picture of there, working with standardized patients who are actors that are trained to portray a medical condition. We have a really beautiful surgical skills lab that includes several operating rooms. There are sinks outside where you learn to scrub in, gown and glove, and maintain a sterile field. So there is a lot of opportunity to those things that you're learning in your courses, apply them in a little bit more of a hands-on setting. In addition to that, as I mentioned, students do OMN lab, and then we also do have a full cadaver anatomy lab. Those are those dual degree opportunities, again, that are available for students in our DO program. If you don't want to add on a whole extra degree, but you do want to take some additional coursework, we do have some electives. So that can be a really cool way to explore different areas that might relate to what you want to do in your career as a physician. So some of the most popular electives that we have currently are ultrasound, which we actually offer a couple semesters of, medical Spanish, which we offer at a beginner and then a more intermediate level, We do have an LGBTQIA plus healthcare course, and then a healthy food preparation elective course as well. On top of that, students do have the opportunity to get involved in research while they're on campus with us. So the two main ways that students would do that would be either a dual degree, which would be in that biomedical sciences program, or so that master's or PhD can include quite a bit of research content, or just an elective course that you can add on anytime after your second semester. So that first semester, we want you to just concentrate on your required coursework, but that second semester of your first year, you can add on research elective credit. The other really popular option is MSRP, that stands for Mentored Student Research Program. That's something that students will do. It's a paid research position. Most commonly, students do that this summer between their first and second year in med school, because that is, I know students will say, like the last free summer of your life, and they want to fill it up with some research content. So just because you have a little bit more flexibility there, you aren't doing things for the required curriculum, you can get paid to add on research credit. So in addition to what you're doing in the classroom, community service is one of our core values as an institution. So there are quite a few ways to get involved past what you're doing in the classroom as well. So on campus, we do have a curriculum offered through our Diversity and Multicultural Affairs Office called the Diversity Health Series, where students learn how to work with different patient populations and provide culturally competent care. Basically, we want to make sure that our students are trained when they go out into the workforce to work with any patient that might walk through their door and provide the best care that they can to that individual. We also do offer some global health opportunities. There are a couple different ones. There are some service trips that are offered over like a spring break. More commonly, students will do some global health rotations in the fourth year. So if that's something that you're interested in, that fourth year in those clinical rotations, there is quite a bit of room for electives there. So sometimes students will do global health rotations out of the US in their fourth year of medical school. There are also a really long list of student clubs and organizations. So there are clubs for just about every medical specialty. There are clubs that are more community service focused. One of our most popular ones is the Homeless Community Outreach Club that partners with the local organization to go offer supplies to individuals that are currently facing homelessness. We do also have some on-campus events that we run. Those are things like Gems and Bros. Those are a couple of opportunities that we invite younger students to come to campus, and our students do like some little mini hands-on labs with them, basically talk about what different careers you can have in medicine, get them excited about opportunities in medicine and science. We do also offer health screenings for seniors in the community and back-to-school physicals for children in the community. And then all kinds of other things that are coordinated through those clubs and organizations. So you'll see in one of these pictures here, we have students volunteering in the recovery area at the finish line of the Des Moines Marathon. Those are things that are coordinated through our clubs that are several opportunities for students to be involved in community service. I do also want to really shout out our students here. We do a lot to prepare them to be successful, and they really do come through with those program outcomes. So we are really proud of the fact that we are significantly above national averages for pass rates on all three steps of the COMLEX, which is the board exams that DO students take. We also have had 99 to 100% residency match for the past 5 years, including matching students into some really competitive specialties. I know that some students, when they're exploring DO programs, see that a lot of DO students do go into primary care, and that certainly is a pretty common pathway. But we absolutely match students into specialties as well. So I know the past couple of years, we've had a handful of students go into orthopedic surgery has been a popular one. Primary care is always near the top of the list. We've had a couple students match into dermatology in some really competitive areas. So even as a DO, that whole person healthcare can really contribute to any specialty field that you're interested in. We also were the first medical school to partner with NAMI, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, for our students to go through their provider education program. So we're really excited about that fact that we were the first ones to make that partnership there. And there is also a lot of support available for students when they are in our program. So in terms of academic support, that would be our CEE, the Center for Educational Enhancement. They're the ones that offer peer tutoring. They do exam prep and general study skills. They do specific board preparation as you get close to that end of your second year and start thinking about taking step one of the boards. So they have several staff who are PhDs in education. So they are not the content experts, but they are the learning experts. So especially as students just get adapted to that pace of medical school, I think that's what I hear is one of the hardest things is not the actual information you're learning, but just the amount of content that you're expected to know. The CEE is really helpful about helping students with that transition. We do also have a really great student counseling center. They offer free, confidential, and unlimited counseling services. So there's no like you can only come 5 times a semester, anything like that. They do also have a medication management professional that works through that office. And then our student life department, they're the ones that oversee those student clubs and the student government and several of those events on and off campus. Some of those are those volunteering events. They also host fun things on campus for our students. Like we always do a Thanksgiving meal because can't travel back for the long weekend. So we make sure that there is quite a bit of community opportunities there as well. And then on top of that, we do have each student assigned a faculty advisor. So that is their go-to person for any questions that might come up while they are on campus with us. And then a big sibling as well. So we have a big sib, little sib program. So as a first year student, you would be paired up with a second year student who is able to, again, just help you with that transition, get you comfortable as you start medical school. Our financial aid office is really awesome about helping with any individual questions that you have on the financial aid process and how to navigate that. And then, as I mentioned before, our wellness center is really beautiful in those group fitness classes. They do offer those free of charge, so no extra fee to participate in those as a student. Okay, so I'm sort of going to transition here and move into the admission side of things. So if you saw that and you feel like DMU could be a really good fit for you, I wanted to give kind of an overview of what we're looking for in our admissions process. And then I'll end here with some actionable tips on, okay, where am I now and what should I do from here? So just kind of an overview to start with. We are looking for students that fit our mission, vision, and values. So for any school that you're considering, definitely go on their website, look at what that is, so that you can see what kind of physician is this school looking to train and prepare for the workforce, and is that the type of physician that I want to be? So at DMU, I think we heard it in the intro here, but I have it for you one more time. Our mission is to improve lives in our global community by educating diverse groups of highly competent and compassionate osteopathic physicians, health educators, researchers, and scholars. So as you're filling out your application, think of, do I fit this mission? And what are some ways that I could show that in my application as you're writing your personal statement, as you're putting down all of the activities that you've been involved in, things like that. So we are looking for future professionals who will sustain our local and global communities, demonstrate compassion and empathy, and students that are academic and service leaders. So those are things that really stand out to us in the application process. Okay, so really what we're looking for is we want to get to know you through your application. So we want to know why you are applying to our school. What are things that are important to you? What has your experience been? All of that. So the things that you want to make sure are coming through on your application are why medicine and why specifically osteopathic medicine. I think it's really easy for students to give some general answers about, oh, I really want to help people. And of course, that's a very valid reason to want to go into medicine, but that also is a good reason to go into social work or any sort of community service career. So there are a million helping professions, but why medicine and why osteopathic medicine specifically? If you can articulate that in your application, that is something that is really going to be to your benefit. We also just want to know what matters to you and why. So what are your values? How do those relate to the values of Des Moines University? And then what experiences have impacted you? So kind of what got you to this point? So those could be any work or volunteering in a health-related setting, any service or extracurricular activities that you've been involved in, anything that you've personally experienced, or having a family member going through something with their health, I know is a common reason that people get interested in medicine. So just kind of tell us your story. What are some experiences that have been really influential to you? And then we also love to know, again, since we really do value that community service, how have you contributed to your community? And I think that can mean a lot of different things. So what are you passionate about? What community do you want to serve? And what have you already done to start connecting with that community? And then, of course, what are your academic achievements as well? So grades, test scores, how have you improved over time? Those are all things that we will consider when we look at your academics. And then really diving one step deeper here, just in terms of really getting in the weeds here, we do use rolling admission for our programs. So that means that as soon as we start receiving applications, we start reviewing them, interviewing, and filling seats in the class. So that application opens a little over a year in advance of when you would actually begin the program. So for example, the application opened in May 2025 for the class that is going to start with us at the end of July 2026. So basically, yeah, you can apply a little over in a year advance, and the application is open almost that full year. It does just get so much more competitive as we get closer to the application deadline, because at the later point in the year, we just have to make some really fine distinctions for the remaining interview seats and seats in the class that are available. As I mentioned a little bit, we do really want to see a well-written and thoughtful personal statement that reflects your commitment to patient care. So your personal statement is like the longest thing that you'll write on your application. That is our best chance to get to know you outside of just the numbers there. So that really is your opportunity to show us why you want to go into a patient care role, why you want to specifically be a physician, and what brought you to that point. On top of that, some positive and specific letters of recommendation. I'll talk a little bit about exactly what our requirements are in a second here. But that is really helpful as well, because we don't know you for the most part at the time that we're seeing your application. We're just getting to know you for the first time. So hearing from people that do know you really well can be really helpful to get a better sense of what qualities you have that could prepare you well to be successful in our program and in your career as a physician. This may seem obvious, but complete the full application. Don't skip sections. Be sure to proofread. We don't have a secondary application at DMU, so we just see your primary application through AMCAS. So there are some DMU specific questions that will pop up as you go through your application. So make sure that you're filling those out, that you're proofreading them, that you're treating them just like any other part of that AMCAS application. And then next, communication with the admissions department. So that absolutely does not mean that you need to be reaching out every week or every month or anything like that. But when we ask if you're still interested, when we send out information on events that we have coming up, if you are invited to interview, making sure that you're communicating with us and taking those steps, that is really helpful, because we love to see applicants that are truly passionate about attending DMU. So that makes us really excited when we can see that we reach out to you and you are saying, yes, I'm still interested in being considered. We do take that into consideration as we're trying to make those final decisions on your application. Okay, so just kind of diving into a few of the aspects of the application. Prerequisites, those are going to be some specific courses that are required. Those are all listed out on our website. They are it's totally fine if they are in progress when you're submitting your application. So as I mentioned, you can apply about a year before you would actually be beginning the program. So it's very, very common for applicants to still be working on finishing up some of those prerequisite courses when you submit your application. We do require a bachelor's degree from a regionally accredited institution within the US. Same thing with the prerequisite courses. That is absolutely fine if it is in progress, as long as everything would be done by the time that you would actually start at DMU. Letters of recommendation. We require 3 letters of recommendation, and we say that those can be from any source. It is really helpful to be the most competitive applicant if you can have a letter from someone in the profession. So for most students, that means a letter from a DO or an MD. That is going to be the person who can really speak to what it takes to be successful as a physician, and hopefully the qualities that you have that are going to make you really successful in the future. So we do take that really seriously. It's also helpful if you have at least one academic letter recommendation that can speak to that side of your application. So like a professor that you've taken a course with, your academic advisor, those would be really good options as well. As I said, we have that minimum of 3. You are welcome to add on additional letters on top of that, but we really do say quality over quantity. So it is a lot more important to have 3 letters that are really strong from people that know you really well, than to just fill up the maximum letters that you can submit with your application. If you have 6 people that know you really well and they're going to write you a really strong letter of recommendation, that works too. But really those 3 that are really strong, that's going to be what we consider a competitive applicant. I do also put in here, have a conversation early. So especially if you're planning to apply early in the cycle, make sure that you're giving your letter writers a heads up so that they have an opportunity to spend some time on that letter, that they know you have an opportunity to reconnect if needed. So it is really helpful to make sure that you're having that conversation early and ensuring that is going to be somebody who writes you a really supportive, positive letter of recommendation. And then your personal statement, as I mentioned before, we want to know why you see yourself in this specific profession. And again, that is your opportunity to tell us what we need to know about you, what you think are some of the most important qualities that you bring, the most influential experiences that you've had. Tell us your story or tell us a story. So it is really helpful if your personal statement can be a little bit of a show rather than tell. I know that's a difficult sort of line to walk, but walking us through a patient encounter, a family situation, something like that, so we can really see what brought you to this point. Next is test scores. I mean, those are easy to compare because it's going to be a number. The MCAT, I know, can be a big stress point in preparing for a medical school application. Remember that the MCAT a lot of times is used to demonstrate your readiness for the medical school curriculum and then your future success on board exams. So we want to make sure that we are admitting students who, after they spend all of their time and money going through that curriculum, that they're going to be able to pass their board exams and actually work as a licensed physician. On top of that, we do accept the AAMC preview. So that is a professional readiness exam. That is going to show some of those skills that may otherwise be a little bit hard to demonstrate in your application, things like how you would handle certain patient situations, your judgment, different qualities like that. That is completely optional. So not at all required to be a competitive applicant, but it is another step that you can take if you feel like you have some of those skills that you really want to make sure that you're demonstrating. A really high preview score could be another good way just to show that you are ready for that profession. And then experiences, I would say, is one of the most important aspects of your application, especially any sort of patient care experience. So we don't have like a required minimum number of hours or anything like that, but some sort of work in a hospital or clinic setting when you're hands-on providing care to a patient is probably the best preparation that you can get for medical school. So that is going to be really helpful to have on your application. In addition, though, include any sort of work experience that you've had, community service, extracurriculars, things like that. I mean, if you are working 20 hours at a restaurant while you're in school, we want to know that you're balancing that in addition to your coursework. So even if it's not health related, it is still really helpful for us to see the full range of experiences that you're involved in. And same thing though, experiences really are quality over quantity. So I know that there's a lot of pressure as a pre-med student to feel like you're doing anything and everything. You don't necessarily need to be involved in every club at your undergraduate school, sign up for everything, be in every patient care role. But if you have a handful of those, and especially, for example, if you take a leadership position in a student club or organization, that could be a really good way to show that quality and those leadership skills rather than just being part of everything that you can find. So we do post our class profile online each year. We just recently updated this for the class that started with us this past fall. This past fall, we had a class size of 229. We're usually between about 220, sometimes a little bit more. So this was one of our larger classes. These numbers here, as I mentioned, those metrics are really easy to compare. So our overall GPA for our most recent class was a 3.71. Overall science GPA was a 3.64. And then average MCAT was a 507. On top of that, there are, as I mentioned, experiences are a really important aspect of the application. So competitive applicants had experience in healthcare, leadership, volunteering, and research. Research experience is not something that is required to be competitive at DMU. If that is something that you're interested in, though, definitely feel free to get involved in research, and it is a great addition to your application. Okay, so I know if you just saw these numbers here and you're like, that is not me right now, I wanted to make sure that we chat a little bit more about breaking some of these numbers down and what you should do at that point. So first of all, Those GPAs, again, are around 3.6, 3.7. Those are averages. So every year we probably have a few students that are 4.0 students. We do have a pretty wide range of GPAs that we admit though. So we generally see about 3.2 and above as competitive. We do not have a hard minimum requirement. So that means that, again, there's that really broad range there. And when we look at GPA, we also do see how did you improve over time? What was your performance specifically in the prerequisite courses? What did your most recent coursework look like, especially if maybe you had a few gap years and then you completed some additional coursework? See, okay, what is your current academic ability? If you're like, my GPA is just nowhere in that ballpark, I think that it is really helpful to use a GPA calculator. I know if you just like Google it, there are options where you can put in what's my current GPA, what's my goal GPA, and then figure out how many credits you would need to take to actually reach that goal. So I know, especially if you completed a big bulk of your undergraduate credits, and then you're like, I'll take a couple extra courses and bump up that GPA a little bit, it changes it by like 0.02. So I think that can be really helpful as you make a realistic plan to see, okay, what would it take to get a little bit closer to that competitive range? For the MCAT, again, we are looking for students that are going to be able to pass their board exams and work as a licensed physician. So keep in mind that with the boards, you don't have an unlimited number of attempts. So I think that for the MCAT, it's important to approach it in kind of a similar way. I know it also is expensive to take the MCAT again and again. So one of my best tips is that if you've taken the MCAT once, you're not happy with your score, take a bit, take some time to refocus, change your study strategies. I don't know if MCAT prep courses are something that would be helpful to you, but make sure that you are taking sufficient time to study before you attempt the MCAT again. So it is really helpful if we see that even if you took the MCAT once and it was pretty low, you took it again and you're a lot closer to that competitive range. We do love to see that improvement. But if you're taking the MCAT again and again and again, that can be when it's a little bit of a concern and again, a big cost on your end. So just make sure that you're taking sufficient time and making sure that you're prepared before your next MCAT attempt. For the MCAT, generally, students that we interview are in about the low 500s or above. Again, the average that we see is about a 507. So if you're significantly below that, it can be really helpful to try to get closer to that average score. That just means that your chances of moving forward to the interview process go up quite a bit. So same thing though, we do not have a hard cutoff or a minimum for that MCAT. And if experience is the thing that you are like, no, I just don't have that yet, that is, again, probably going to take some time to build up. We don't have a number of hours that we're looking for, but again, some hands-on patient care, especially combined with some shadowing, whether that's a DO or an MD, that is going to be really helpful in many aspects of your application. So when we're looking for competitiveness, of course, just to see that you have some of those clinical skills already, but also as you're writing your personal statement, as I talked about, if you've experienced working with patients, that makes it a lot easier to talk about why you want to work with patients in your career. If you have worked closely with physicians, that is really helpful in getting a physician to be able to write you a strong letter of recommendation saying that you have what it takes to be successful. And I know a few of you are currently at a community college. So if you have not yet started at a four-year college or university, know that you would need to complete your bachelor's degree before starting our DO program. So make sure that's at a regionally accredited college or university. It is totally fine if you are completing some of those like gen ed courses at your community college. I would say make sure that the majority of our prerequisites, so again, those courses that are required for our DO program, if it's helpful if you complete most of those at your four-year institution. If you have already, you're like, I've already taken Gen Chem 1 and 2, I've already taken Physics 1 and 2, that is another good opportunity to demonstrate then at your four-year institution, taking some upper level science courses. So it's some upper level chemistry courses, complete your biochemistry there. Really, that is only a concern for us if somebody's completing all of their prerequisites at the community college level. That may just raise a little bit of a flag on our end of wondering why those weren't completed at the four-year institution. But other than that, generally not a detriment at all to students that end up attending our DO program. I think that can be a really good way to slowly build up that transition and make sure that you're comfortable as you're completing your bachelor's degree. For students that have kind of the opposite end of it, where you completed your bachelor's degree a while ago, we do generally have a good number of non-traditional students enter our program as well. So there is not one path to take. We've had career changers, people that just graduate and then maybe take a gap year or two, and everything in between. With those prerequisites, then, we do want to see the majority of those within about 3 to 5 years of when you would actually begin the program. So that is for your own preparation, just because, again, it's the fast pace of the program. Jumping right into those foundational sciences can be really difficult if it's been quite a while since you've completed some of those. So we would say just refresh them if needed. Again, not a hard cutoff, but if you're approaching 5 years on most of those, it is really helpful for us to see some current coursework. And then gain significant health-related experience. Is what we see most students do if they are taking a gap year, would be like work full-time in healthcare. Again, there's really no substitute for having that hands-on experience in a hospital or clinic setting, working around physicians or other health professionals. And then lastly, explore other graduate programs. So I don't necessarily mean that to say, look at other options. DO school is not going to be for you. But what I mean by that is if you're on this first point here, you're using a GPA calculator and you're realizing you're going to need a significant number of credits to get to the anywhere near that average GPA that we see. Looking at maybe a master's program that is going to prepare you can be a really good way to get a significant number of credits in a 1 to 2 year program. And especially if those are graduate credits, especially in the hard sciences, those can be a really good way to demonstrate your readiness for our DO program. So at DMU, that could be like our Master of Science in Anatomy that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, our Master of Science in Biomedical Sciences that does offer some more research options if that's something that you're interested in. Something like that, just to, again, bulk up that number of credits to be able to significantly influence your GPA can be a really good way to get a little bit closer to that class profile that we saw. But my last point here is that, again, our class profile that we post, those are averages of the 200 some students that we admitted into our program, and not everyone looks the same. So there are students that have taken a variety of paths to get to that place where they are a competitive applicant. It is competitive overall. Medical school is competitive to get into. It is really helpful to take some of these realistic tips and assess if there are things that you can do before you apply to set yourself up for success, but also understand that there may be some specific things that you can bring to the class, what life experiences you've had, having a different journey and different perspective than other people. What I know, we've had students that they left college to maybe care for a family member that was sick, and they learned quite a bit from that experience, and maybe their GPAs absolutely went in the tank, and then they refocused. They maybe went back to school, maybe completed a graduate program, a master's degree after that, and then ended up being a really competitive applicant, but they have that life experience that not everybody had. So just understanding that, demonstrate on your application what specific journey you took and what that is going to bring to our class, why that makes you the most competitive applicant that you can be. Okay, so I'll stop there and we can move into our Q&A here. I do have my email listed here. I am always happy to answer specific questions by email. This is our general admissions email, the DMU admit@dmu.edu. That is always like a good place to start if you need something, you're not sure who to reach out to. And then last thing I have here is our admissions events page. So if you go to our DMU website, click on admissions, and then the events section, you'll be able to see some upcoming options that we have. The one I will mention is that we offer something called DMU Prep. Those are group advising sessions meant for people that are getting ready to prepare and submit their application. We offer those both virtually and in person. So we have an in-person one coming up in October, and then a virtual one coming up in December. We'll likely offer a few more this spring as well. So keep an eye on that events page if that's something that after today you get a couple questions answered and then you start filling out the application and more come up. That would be a really great event for you to attend here.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I'll start with the first question. So which specialties tend to use the osteopathic manual medicine more, and which ones tend to use it less?
Yeah, great question. I am absolutely not the expert on this. So I would say I am happy to ask some of our OMM faculty. They can probably tell you more. But I know personally, in my own experience, I have seen a primary care DO who does OMM like all day, every day. So that is what she does in her practice. She works out of a clinic and specifically looks for patients that are looking for OMM treatment. I know some specialties like students going into dermatology, some surgical specialties, like your time with patients, it's just probably not going to include a lot of that OMM content. It can be still really helpful because you have that really great understanding of anatomy. But yeah, probably not something that when you're actually practicing is going to be part of your day-to-day schedule.
Yeah, family medicine, internal medicine, pediatrics, but also PM&R, pain management, neuromuscular medicine. A lot of those folks do it. I have one of my friends actually, he went to DMU and spoke a while back, actually last. He's a sports medicine doctor and he uses some OMM. Obviously, if you come in with a broken leg, you're not going to use OMM. You're going to use pins and pins and needles. But he uses it, and if you go back and watch, he talks about how he uses OMM for sports medicine.
Yeah, sports medicine is another good one. I know that the our students that volunteer at the finish line at the Des Moines Marathon, a lot of providing OMM treatment is what they do to help the athletes recover.
So our second question is, what can I do to become a more attractive applicant to Des Moines DO program? I know you briefly spoke about this.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, it kind of depends on where you're coming from. So first thing is review that class profile again, see if there are any areas where you know it's going to be obvious that there can be some improvement there. If you're looking at that and you're like, I'm in the general ballpark already, I'd say that's when focusing on those qualities that are not just the numbers, not just the metrics, but really showing again that fit for our mission, vision, and values, really a passion for patient care coming through in your personal statement, and especially some healthcare experience and experience working with underserved communities, community service, and whatever you're passionate about, whatever that means to you. Those can all be things that, if your numbers are already in that ballpark, can make an applicant really stand out as a competitive one.
So would you also be able to briefly explain more of the research opportunities that are open to students?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think probably most common is the MSRP. So that was the Mentored Student Research Program. That is the paid research position that students generally do this summer between their first and second year. On top of that, students can research for elective credit so that they can add on starting their second semester of first year. And they can kind of fit that in any time in the curriculum. Most common would be that first and second year. And then there are also some research rotations that you can do in your fourth year when you're in more of those elective rotations. Those first two that I mentioned, the MSRP and then the research elective, those are going to be basically pairing up with a faculty member who's going to be your research mentor. So we have faculty researching in a really wide variety of areas. Most of them are more on the basic science side of things. And basically you would find somebody whose research you're interested in and either apply during that summer research position or for elective credit to pair up and work with them.
Thank you. And someone was asking, are community colleges completed as post-bac accepted from an accredited community college?
Yes, I think if I'm understanding the question, you're talking about, so you completed your degree and then as the post-bac afterwards, you're completing more community college credits. Yes, absolutely, that is accepted. Same thing as if you attended a community college prior to going into your four-year institution, where we probably don't want to see all of the prerequisites completed there. But if you are doing that as just a refresher because your undergrad was a while ago, or there are some prerequisites that you missed, anything like that, that is a really good way to do it at a little bit lower cost.
Great. So someone said, I'm currently in my third gap year and I haven't done much recent clinical work. The last clinical experience I had was a couple years ago. What would you recommend I do this point to strengthen my application?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that the good news is your clinical work doesn't expire or anything like that. So that work that you had a couple years back is still going to be a really good addition to your application. What we would want to know then is maybe why did you move away from that clinical work? Was there something else that you're passionate about? If it's research or something else related, awesome. If you just had other things come up in your life, make sure that we know that somewhere on your application. And then I would say just get back into it, even if it's a couple of hours a week. So if you have like a several hundred hours built up from several years back, and then right now all you can do is a couple hours a week, something like that would still be a really good addition to show that you still have that commitment to patient care. That's what you're passionate about. And again, give you some more recent experiences to refer to in your personal statement, in your interview, things like that.
What specific types of patient care jobs and experiences do you recommend?
Yeah, good question. We see such a wide variety that I'll list a few here, but that is not an exhaustive list at all. Probably most common would be a medical scribe, patient care tech, CNA, EMT or paramedic, anything really where you're like assisting with activities of daily living, you're taking vitals, you're doing wound care. Something like that is going to be the most competitive experience. And right there with that is being a scribe because you're in the room seeing the physician interact with their patient as they're providing those types of treatments.
And is there a preference for locals when it comes to acceptances?
Yeah, great question. Not at all. So DMU is a private institution. We do not have any sort of preference for in-state applicants when we're going through our admissions process. Tuition is the same for everybody across the board as well. So you don't need to worry about qualifying for in-state tuition or anything like that.
Great, thank you. I have one question just in regards to after you get through the application process, could you elaborate more on the interview process if there is one and if that's via Zoom, if it's like the multiple like mini interviews that they have for some universities?
Yeah, absolutely. So I will say we kind of refine our interview process a little bit each year. So currently what we're doing is completely a virtual process. It is currently two steps. So one of those steps is a live Zoom with some of our faculty and current students. That is designed to be a little bit more informational. So an opportunity to interview us a little bit, ask your questions, get to know a little bit more about DMU. And then from there, you go into a live interview with a faculty member. That is completely virtual as well. So it's a 30-minute one-on-one with a faculty member. And that is where students are asked more the traditional interview questions.
Thank you. That is all for the questions so far. I will see.
Alrighty. If anybody doesn't have any questions. Oh, one more question. Do you want to ask that?
Sure. So are DO students able to take the USMLE?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that is becoming more common, especially as DO students are entering just about every medical specialty in residency. I didn't mention much about this. So every student has their dedicated faculty advisor, but we also have two kind of super advisors. They're the overall advisors. One of them is for our first and second year students, and then one of them is for our third and fourth year students. So in the first and second year, that advisor is really helping people prepare for that first step of the boards for career planning, a little bit of exploration, what activities are going to be helpful for you to get involved in at this point. Are you considering specialties that need research, things like that? And then the third and fourth year advisor, her role is to make sure that students are prepared for residency. So again, at that point, especially if you've done your third year rotations, you know what specialties you're interested in. She is really helpful for saying, okay, this specialty, you really do want to take USMLE. This one, not at all necessary. But our students have been pretty successful on USMLE, so the MD boards, and then COMLEX, the DO boards as well. So
Thank you. Another question. So, how do clinical rotations at DMU work? I've heard for DO schools, clinical placements are harder to get into since they require more traveling. Are clinical placements guaranteed, and how far do students travel to reach their assigned placements?
Yeah, great question. So just kind of a basic overview. Third year, the main goal is getting you through all of your required rotations. So we require like 4 weeks in this specialty, 8 weeks in this specialty. And that is the goal, is to make sure that you get all of those different experiences. So for the third year, the majority of our rotation sites are in Iowa or the surrounding states. So they're pretty concentrated in the Midwest. So within Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin, or Illinois is where the majority of students go. Some of those do require quite a bit of traveling, and some of those are more year-long sites. So we have been really lucky, especially with that really strong reputation of DMU, that we have had all of these clinical partners work with us to take our DMU students. So it's more about which sites you get, but we want to make sure that, yes, you will be fulfilling all of your requirements. So some students will be at a more year-long rotation. So at one of those sites in the states I mentioned, for the majority of their rotations, maybe just need to travel for a couple of different specialties. Some students will be in what we call the Central Iowa cohort, which is really nice for students that want to be located as close to the Des Moines area as possible, stay near to campus, and they will be traveling within about an hour, hour and a half for those rotation sites. So it won't just be at one hospital or clinic, it would be traveling between sites in the area. And then fourth year, that would be when you are setting up your audition rotations. So you're trying to get into programs that have a residency that you want to match into. So that again is where our overall advisor for third and fourth year students is really going to work with you closely to plan out what audition rotations are going to look like for you. And those fourth year rotations can be all around the US. And again, some of those global health opportunities as well.
But also, it's up to where you want to end up for residency. So if you are from California, you probably want to come back to California. You want to do rotations away in California. Usually, you do your rotations your fourth year where you want to end up. So, and that's perfect. That's up to you. And most schools give you flexibility. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, fourth year is really student driven
and if they
on either
don't,
location or specialty.
then if they don't, then it's becomes problematic if you want to not, want to move to another part of the country.
For sure. And I don't think I mentioned, but third year, it is just a ranking system. So basically, you'll get a booklet of all the available sites. You'll rank your top 10, and then it goes into a computer algorithm to match as many students with their top choices as possible. I know at some sites, they do also take like a personal statement. So if there's somewhere that you're really serious about wanting to end up, that can be another way to advocate for yourself.
Great. And are the scores for COMLEX and USMLE Step 2 published online?
Yeah, great question. Specific scores, I actually don't know. I know pass rates are. So on our website, we have a program outcomes page, and that's where you can find data for, I think it goes back the last 5 years or so. What the specific scores are, that is a really good question. I know we keep that data. I'm not sure if it's published. So if you don't find that on that program outcomes, send me an email and I'll see if that's something that we can share as well. But I know when we go into diving into that data, it's not just the pass rate, but it's actually the overall score that DMU was significantly higher than that national average as well.
And could you describe the culture that Des Moines University College of Medicine, I guess, cultivates, as well as what the surrounding area is like for prospective students?
For sure. So I think that a collaborative culture is probably the number one thing that I hear students say. It's competitive to get into school, but once you're here, everyone wants to see everyone else succeed. So I know students, they all have like a class-wide group me where they message each other, they share study resources, set up group study, things like that. So it's really not competitive in terms of everybody trying to be number one in the class. We just want to see everybody be successful. And that also goes between programs as well. So I mentioned that we have all those different graduate students in medicine and health science. That offers a really cool opportunity for interprofessional education to work with physical therapy students and faculty, doctor of podiatric medicine students and faculty. So start making some of those professional connections as well. And then surrounding area, as I mentioned, we're pretty suburban. So we are in West Des Moines. We have 88 acres on our new campus, so a pretty wide open area. We have really beautiful biking and walking trails. We actually have a little 2-mile trail that's just on our campus, which is a really nice way to just go take a quick lunch break walk. Goes past a little pond, things like that. And then we are just about a 5-minute drive or so from like grocery stores. There's a big mall within 10 minutes, lots of restaurants and things like that. And then some students do also either live or at least go hang out on the weekends in the downtown Des Moines area. That's only about 15 minutes or so away from campus.
Thank you. And is the grading system pass or fail, or is it score based?
Yeah, so we are on an honors high pass fail curriculum. So that was sort of designed by our one of our associate deans who previously worked at a residency program as a residency director, knowing that it's really helpful for that to kind of be standardized across the curriculum. So students are going to be on that honors high pass fail grading system throughout the curriculum.
Thank you. And what do students tend to do outside of school? You briefly touched upon this already, but
Yeah, I think outside of school, I mean, there are more volunteering opportunities than I think anyone has time for when they're in med school. So that's probably a really common way that people fill their time. We do have partnerships with one of the local free clinics. So that is another way that students get some of that early clinical experience. Just for fun, definitely, I think like going out to eat is probably the most common thing I hear from students, just because we do have a lot of really great restaurants in the area. We have a really big farmers market in downtown Des Moines, so we just wrapped that up, but over the summer, that's a really popular one. We get, yeah, a decent number of like musicians and festivals and things like that around the area. So I think that there is a lot to do. I've heard from students that they never have trouble filling their free time.
could you describe the financial opportunities as well as scholarships that are offered and what's the average cost for the area as well as coming out of studies?
For sure, yeah. So some of those questions I can answer. I will probably say go to our financial aid team for specifics because they really are the experts, and I don't want to go into anything that is not my area of expertise. But just kind of overall, in terms of financial aid, most students will use some type of loan to pay for the cost of tuition. And so we set our cost of attendance budget each year, which is the total tuition cost plus living expenses. In Des Moines in general is a little bit lower than average cost of living around the US. So that definitely helps when you're on a med school budget. So basically that total cost of attendance, your living plus tuition is the total amount of financial aid that you're eligible to receive. And again, loans are probably most common for students to pay for that. We do have a limited number of merit-based scholarships, and those require no application. So everybody that applies to DMU, if they're accepted into the DO program, they automatically go through scholarship consideration. So nothing, no extra step for you. Most often scholarships are awarded within a few weeks of acceptance, and we're really just looking for students that stand out through their application through the interview process.
And do you place any specific weight on shadowing versus just clinical opportunities, or do you just look for involvement within the clinical space?
Yeah, I think that pretty much any combination can be a really good way to prepare for medical school as long as it has a little bit of shadowing and significant amount of you're providing some sort of hands-on care or like scribing when you're in the room seeing that hands-on care. So I think just having some shadowing is really important, no certain number of hours. It also can be a good way to explore what DO physicians do, especially DOs in various specialties, but we really leave that up to you. So however much shadowing you can fit into your schedule.
So I would just say, look at shadowing this way. You say that you want to run the Olympic marathon, and shadowing is like saying, yeah, I've been to like 10 meets and I've seen people run an Olympic marathon or 100 meters, but I've actually never run it, but I want to run at, but at least you say, yeah, you know what? I want to run at the Olympic. I want to run at the Olympic 100 meters, and I've tried it a few times. I've lifted some weights. I've done a couple of runs, I've done some work, and yeah, I could do it. So it's kind of like that whole thing. And so I think like you should look at shadowing and saying that whatever activity that you do in life, if you've just watched it and not done it, can you do it? And that's a question that you have to answer. And nobody can answer that for you. So throwing that out there.
So thoughts on virtual shadowing as opposed to in-person shadowing?
I think either one is great. I think in person, you can probably see a little bit more of that full aspect of what a physician is doing on a day-to-day basis. But I know, especially if you're trying to shadow DOs, in some areas, DOs are a lot more prevalent than others. So if virtual is easier for you wherever you're currently located, that is a great addition as well.
If you choose one of the dual degree programs, what would your coursework look like? Would it require an extra year?
Yeah, great question. So basically, just to start with, the first step in one of the dual degrees is to apply and be accepted to the DO program first. And then from there, if you want to add on a dual degree, it really depends on which one of those programs that is. So our Master of Science in Anatomy, that can be completed as a dual degree within the 4 years that you are already in the DO program. Some of the majority of that extra coursework you complete in that summer between first and second year. As I mentioned, that's when students have a little bit of free time. And then you complete a few extra courses the second semester, or excuse me, the first and second semester of your second year. So basically, over the first summer and the second year, you're completing that additional Master's of Science in Anatomy coursework. For the Master's in Biomedical Sciences, that requires a little bit more research content. So for that one, students have the option of starting this summer actually before they start the DO program. So you do have to be admitted into the DO program, but then you have an opportunity to start working on that coursework the summer before, and that can shorten it up. So I think it is still possible for students to complete that within the 4 years. PhD, that is going to take additional time. There's really no way around that. You just have quite a bit of additional of your own research that you need to complete. And then Master of Healthcare Administration and Master of Public Health, those are our two that are most flexible because they are online programs. So you can start them. Again, same thing. We just don't want you to be doing dual degree coursework during your very first semester with us, but you can start them before you start that first semester. You can start them during your second semester, and you have up to 5 years to complete those. So if you just want to do like one course here and there at a time while you're in school, and then you're in residency, you want to finish that up, that is an option for either of those two online programs as well.
Thank you. How does your program evaluate students that have a non-traditional pathway or maybe an upward GPA or take many gap years?
For sure. I think that non-traditional student, again, not at all uncommon. It is just a matter of then going back and making sure you have some of those things I mentioned, like the recent coursework, especially in those sciences and those prerequisites, some recent clinical experience, things like that. And especially if you did take several gap years, if you were working in healthcare, that could be a really good strength of yours if you built up several hours working in a clinical setting. Yeah, so I think that completing some recent coursework is really helpful if you've been out of school for more than about 3 years or so. And then in evaluating the upwards trajectory in GPA, we consider both your most recent coursework. So we can see something in the application service that's the last 60 hours, which basically means what was your GPA over the last 60 credits that you completed. So we can pull that out and see, okay, what was your overall GPA, but also what was your most recent performance like? We also go through like your full transcript. So we'll see, okay, what did it look like when you first started? What's it look like more recently? That doesn't replace overall GPA. It is still helpful to make sure that you're in that general competitive range. But if you're on a little bit of the lower end, but with some really good recent coursework, especially if that was in the upper level sciences, we do take that pretty seriously as well.
Are there med student interest groups for students that are interested in collaborating with other students at the school?
Yes, I'm trying to think about exactly where you're coming from answering that question. The answer is probably going to be yes. All of ours, so I mentioned we have several student clubs and organizations. All of those are open to students across our programs, unless they're program specific, like the Student Osteopathic Medical Association. But if they're not program specific, students from any of our on-campus programs could join those. So that can be a really good way to get some of that interprofessional education. I mean, just in terms of like meeting your fellow students, I think that is not hard at all because of that really collaborative culture. So signing up for some of those volunteering activities. We do something early on when you first start called Club Day, and basically you can get put on the newsletter for any club that you're at all interested in. You probably can't join all of them because you just don't have time, but that is a really good way to just see what events are going on. You could always just jump into those as well if you're trying to meet people, get involved with other people that have similar interests than you, and participate in some of those community service activities. I hope I answered the question.
Thank you. And you spoke about some collaborations. Are there other collaborations with other universities or other places in the vicinity that are open to students to engage with?
Good question. I would say that I know we have had some students complete research with outside organizations. So I know we've had some students do, we had a student do a research project with the CDC, with some of those global health partners as well. That is a really good way to get connected to either local organizations that are doing global health work or organizations abroad when students are going there for service trips or rotations. Yeah, I would say that those are probably the main ways. And then like our partnerships with the local free clinics and things like that would be another way to meet other organizations in the area.
And so, how would you say that this program differentiates itself from an MD program and process?
I think that the big differences are going to be that OMM content. So being able to get that early hands-on experience. And then the really holistic focus on how we're training our students to be physicians. So I think that, I mean, the medicine, the basic sciences that you're learning, a lot of that and the overall structure of the program with your lectures and labs and the new clinical experiences, that's going to look really, really similar. And those residencies that you're going into are the same for all MD and DO students. So it's a little bit of that human side of medicine is something additional that DO students learn in how to treat your patient as a whole person and how does that integrate into the way that you would approach somebody who is receiving care from you.
Thank you.
I would just say that make sure if you're applying to any medical school, DO, MD, that you know what their mission is and you have some background. I would say that I've heard from Mr. Davis from Tura, he's a personal friend of mine. Um, a lot of people show up to those interviews with great scores, but they don't know anything about osteopathic medicine. And I would just tell you that the schools get really pissed, and that's like a really bad look on you. So make sure that if you're going to apply to DO, there is, put a link on there. You could shadow a DO. They're pretty available if you go to find a DO, to know what it is and also do your research. And there's hundreds of, you know, um, videos if you don't like reading, but there's a lot of books and history about it. So make sure that you're informed and know their mission statement as well and the scope of practice. And this is another one that you should never tell a DO. It's like, so being a DO is just like a chiropractor, right? And that is not like a good thing to tell people. Oh, where did she go? Oh, Christina disappeared. Maybe, oh, there you go. Sorry. So yeah, so make sure you know the stuff and you're fully prepared. Because I mean, I've heard a lot of things people, that have gone wrong. So don't be that person.
Two more questions. So I'm planning to complete a post-bac that would last from spring to fall 2026 next year. Do you recommend applying to medical school if I'm halfway done with the post-bac and plan to have it finished by the time results would come out?
Good question. So I think that, so in this specific case, I would say make sure that your program wraps up before we would actually matriculate. So our fall semester starts a little bit early than most undergrads do. So we start with orientation generally the last week in July and then classes the first week in August. So just keep that in mind. And we usually require final transcripts ahead of that, especially if you're completing any of those prerequisites in the post-bac program. If you are doing this to increase your GPA, I think that would be another thing to keep in mind. What is your GPA going to look like when you first submit your application? So if it's already if it's already in that general range that we're seeing for competitive GPAs, which again is probably like 3.2-ish and up, closer to 3.6 or 3.7 on average. If you're just a little bit below that and you're hoping to bump it up slightly with this post-bac program, then I would say go ahead and submit your application. You can include your planned coursework, and then you are welcome to submit updates throughout the year as well. So AMCAS, the centralized application service, they have academic update periods where like at the end of each semester, you can go in and submit your new official transcript. We are always happy to take updates by email as well. So if it's just, I completed another semester, I got all A's, that's awesome. We want to hear that. We are happy to take that into consideration. If you are not at all happy with your GPA currently, and you really do need that full post-bac year, to bump up that GPA, then I would say that is when it can be really helpful to wait and submit your application when you're a little bit closer to that target GPA. Because although we're happy to take updates, AAMS does not recalculate what they have in their GPA section. So when you hit submit, that is the GPA that's going to pop up when we first see your application. So of course we'll dive deeper, but I would say, yeah, think about the timeline of how that is all going to come together. Feel free to email me if you want to provide more specifics on your situation as well.
Miss Johnson, can you tell us how many applications you get every year?
Let me see if I can pull, it changes
Ballpark.
a little bit. Yeah, year to year, but generally somewhere in the range of 4,000 to 5,000.
Yeah.
And that
And
is
how many
for,
staff
again,
people
about
do you have?
220 seats in the class. We have 3 of us that review applications for our DO program.
So I would just say to you that if as soon as you press that up send button, um, you know, there's humans on the other end of it. So if you keep sending updates, if every person sends one or two updates, that's you know, that's over 10,000 updates. And humanly, you can't do it. I mean, I get 20 emails a day and I have like heart palpitations. So just know that if you have to understand the other side of it, and a lot of schools don't even have 3 people. A lot of schools only have like 1 people to do it. So just know that I know that you know there's the whole speed thing, but also if you're doing your post bac, you're in the fall of 26 that's ending, your transcript's not going to come out till probably January of 27, like January 5th or 10th or whatever. And you know, and sending updates at that point. The other thing is also know that every time you apply, it's pretty expensive. The last part is if you're doing a post bac, you're probably taking 18, 20 units. And if you apply to 30 medical schools, how are you going to have time to get good grades and then write 7 to 10 essays for your secondaries? So just, I know that you want to be in a rush, but you want to do it right than to keep doing it, you know. That's the only thing I'm advising. But what?
No, I appreciate that. Absolutely. Yeah, I know it ends up being a game of patience quite a bit after you submit the application to hear back, just because we do have so many to get through. We do send out like surveys for continued interest, and then using that academic update period in AAMS. Those are 2 really good ways to make sure that those are included with your application. And then, yeah, if it's been like several months and you haven't heard back, we are more than happy to take an individual email from you. But yeah, that absolutely is true that the more time that we spend answering individual emails, then of course, so that means it takes a little bit longer to hear back on your application. So it is all a
No,
balancing
it's
game.
just a human. It's just a human. Like the reason they have these application systems and it costs a lot of money so that everything is there instead of you know finding. I could just tell you for our leadership when we recruit, we get about 100 applications and it takes like 5 of us just to keep everything in order. And you know we don't use $1 million application system, but still it's a lot of work. So if anytime somebody sends an update, you're just kind of like, and at some point like after the first 1,000 you're like, you know what, it's just really hard to do it. I think there's 2 more questions.
Yes. Could you provide a rundown of what an interview process would look like? I suppose like questions that would be asked.
Yeah, so with our two-step interview process, as I mentioned, that first step, really your job is to learn about DMU, ask your questions, remain professional, make a good impression, but we're not in that first step going to be asking you any sort of interview questions. So that is your chance to hear from a faculty member and hear from current students. The second step, that live interview with a faculty member, that is when you're going to be asked some like situational questions, like tell me about a time this happened. How would you deal with this situation? Things like that. And I think that, again, it's 30 minutes one-on-one. So you generally will have 2 to 3 minutes or so to answer each of those. And yeah, I think that the faculty try to leave a little bit of time for questions at the end of that as well. So you can ask those one-on-one.
Does DMU have secondaries? And if so, how many questions are in the secondaries? Do all students that submit a primary receive a secondary?
We do not have a secondary at all. So that cuts down the extra process, cuts down any extra cost for you, no extra fee. Just make sure to answer the DMU specific questions that are included within that primary application on a COMIS.
Where are some of the global health rotations commonly located?
They change a little bit each year. I think we currently have, I want to say it's around 12 sites or so. So those are several in Europe, South America, Asia, and Africa. So yeah, kind of all across the globe. And we really just, I mean, we vet those sites pretty heavily, not only for student safety, but also that they're going to be really good learning outcomes from being there. So that's why they're up to changing. But yeah, generally there are more offerings available than students available to take those places.
I put the link there's a map you could look at it, but also that changes, because if there's a war somewhere, I'm probably not going to go.
Absolutely.
They have their little maps on there.
So what is the faculty to student ratio on average?
Yeah, so I don't actually know the answer for overall because the way that our colleges are structured, we have faculty across all those different programs. So some of them are like basic science faculty, some of them are teaching the applied content in the DO program. What I can say is that when we divide up all of our faculty within the College of Osteopathic Medicine to assign advisees to them, each faculty has about 4 to 5 students each year that they advise. So still quite a bit of opportunity for that, individual mentorship and help from your faculty mentor. They all have a really nice open door policy as well. And on our new campus, we have like all of the faculty are in a loop on the 3rd floor and then a loop on the 4th floor. So you can, if you like, I just need somebody now, you can just go in and see who might be able to answer that question or try to find somebody that has a background in a certain subject or specialty area that you want to know more about.
Great, and I believe that is all the questions.
Alrighty. Well, ladies, have a great Friday evening. Everyone, thank you for coming. And hopefully we will see you on the next one. And thank you again, Ms. Johnson. I know it's pretty late in Iowa, so thank you for being at work this late.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thank you again for having me. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.